Hey, everybody, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling. Matt Phillips is joining me.
Hey, guys.
And we got a couple things to talk about today. This is a review episode. We're going to be talking about first new album in a long time by, one of our favorite guitar heroes. But, oh, yeah, and then some, multiple necks. But first, very exciting. And by now, it's been almost a week. But Unspooled is back, baby. By popular demand, had so many people message either myself or Matt saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry I missed out on the Kickstarter. Can I still get a book?" And a lot of people did that. So we bit the bullet and said, I hate the idea of people that want the book can't have it. So we've made it available again. It's the same edition, just soft cover. And if you want one, $65 Canadian funds, worldwide, same price. And you can PayPal me, you can e-transfer me. All of the information can be found on Tim's Vinyl Confessions on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or you can message me on any of those, or you can email timsvinylconfessions@gmail.com, and we'll get you a book. We'll get you a soft cover of Unspooled, which a soft cover is, there's no lack of quality between that and the hardcover. As a matter of fact, soft cover is the one that's my day-to-day reader. That's the one that I flip through. So, hearing good responses from people that have gotten it, which is great. Glad everybody's happy with it. So, it's available again. So, I guess that's all I get to say on that. Thanks to everybody that's ordered. So today we are going to talk about little Stevie Vai. What a nice little boy. Steve's got a new album out. He's had a new album out, Inviolate. And I actually saved the hype sticker, just put that in that black space there. But this is Steve's first new album in about 6 years. But before we go into that, I thought, Matt, I thought it might be good to go over, since we've never done a Steve Vai episode before, it might be good to go over what we have by him. Sadly, I think we're both lacking quite a bit. Sadly, neither of us have any vinyl by Steve. No. The only vinyl I have by Steve would be the 2 David Lee Roth albums and Whitesnake Slip of the Tongue. And because you don't see Steve Vai vinyl. I've never come across it. So Steve Vai, of course, he played with Frank Zappa, and then his first solo album, basically he did it himself, 1984, Flexible, which I've come to realize over the years, this is actually the second cover for it. The first cover is way, way different. This is a quirky, strange little album. I found this cassette in 1990 after his big album, Passion and Warfare, came out. And I remember John and I both found this at the same time, and we were like, we thought we had something nobody else had. Nobody else has this. This is like, exclusive. I mean, that's not true, but certainly for our little neck of the woods. And then, of course, after that, he joined the band Alcatraz. He replaced Yngwie Malmsteen in Alcatraz and did one album with them called Disturbing the Peace. Then he joined David Lee Roth's band, and that's where most people came to know him. I mean, the heart-shaped guitar, the flamboyance, and around the same time, 1986, he was Jack Butler in Crossroads, the devil's own guitar player. He did that crazy solo at the end of that movie. And, we're led to believe that the Karate Kid outplayed Steve Vai. But anyway, that was actually a guitar player by the name of Arlen Roth, no relation, that played the parts that Ralph actually did a pretty good job with mimicking. So David Lee Roth comes along. He's in all the guitar magazines. David Coverdale gets him for Whitesnake Slip of the Tongue. They do the one album, the one tour. And then while that tour is going on, Steve puts out what would be his most successful album, I Am the Passion, I Am the Warfare. This is, to my knowledge, this is Steve Vai's only gold album. This was a pretty big album for him. I bought this cassette, and it was something like I didn't normally purchase at the time. It's been reissued, of course. I think Matt and I both have like originals. Mine's on Relativity. Epic, Sony reissued them all. This is a Canadian cassette. And after that, there's huge gaps in my collection. So I think Matt can take up the story from here, and I'll jump in sometime in the mid 90s.
Okay. We actually have, I think when I chatted with you before, between the two of us, we have almost all of his quote unquote studio albums. We're missing a few in the discography, but where he picks up after this is in 1993. He did a solo band project. It's a solo thing. It's just called Vi. He wanted it to be a band project though, and he found this unknown singer and songwriter, and actually one of my favorite Canadian musicians of all time now. But at the time when this album came out, 1993, this is Vi. I hated this. It was way too aggressive for my taste at the time, and I just didn't get it. I saw the first video for oh
Down
man,
deep into the pain.
yeah, Down Deep Into the Pain. I was like, what is this
Yeah.
noise?
Yeah,
So
Devin Townsend's one of your favorites now, and
yes,
from
exactly.
Vancouver. And
Yeah.
he was he was very young at the time. Wasn't
Very young, yeah,
he? Yeah.
yeah. And this does have some really great stuff on it now that Devin actually wrote a few songs, like I think track 10, Pig, he wrote that. And number 3 is called In My Dreams With You, a 5-minute, just a beautiful kind of hard rock ballady type song. And Devin is so emotive. And again, it took me a really long time to get into that record, but that was 1993.
Matt,
And
doesn't Desmond Child have a co-write on that song?
oh,
Seems to,
yeah,
seems to
that's
me
right.
that I think
Yeah,
that's the song. It was one of the songs in there, and I know it was a really melodic one. I'm not familiar with this album at all, and it's interesting because Devin's a wildly creative guy, but his vocals are definitely an acquired taste. And he's got a cult following all over the world. And I know just from seeing Matt's stuff, he releases these really elaborate, really cool packages too. He really takes care of the fans.
yeah,
I've actually got him on a Rush tribute album that came out in
yeah.
1996. He does a version of the song Natural Science, and it's different. It's different, but when I listen to it now and I go, he knows the song. He's not just reading the lyrics off of, so he's emoting the way that he would emote, but he knows the song. I think we both have the next thing to come out. One of my favorite things to listen to.
Yeah,
Steve
for
came
sure.
out 1995, Alien Love Secrets. Now, Matt got this when it came out. I got it just a few years ago, and I got this cheap Sony custom marketing group version of it. And there's nothing in it. Like it's a green CD, and it's
Okay.
just like an empty there's nothing in it. And he
So we
calls
should
this an
say,
EP, but it's
yeah,
actually pretty lengthy.
it's a 7-song EP, kind of continuing with the theme that he would use on most of his albums. If anyone knows that track 7 is usually the quote unquote kind of ballad on his records. So that's one of the reasons why this one actually made it to 7 songs, so that he could put number 7, Tender Surrender, is the ballad on this EP.
It's got Bad Horsey. It's one of his
Oh,
heaviest. It's
yeah.
And if anybody's never seen it, the video is really cool. He and his band, they're all painted silver, and it's just a really cool song. A really cute song on here is called Yayo Gak,
Yeah.
where his son Julian was just a little kid, just a toddler, and Steve recorded the noises he was making, reapproximated them on the guitar, so the kids like Yayo get and made a song out of it. I mean, only Steve Vai would do something like that. So my understanding is that Alien Love Secrets was just something to put out, kind of to tide the fans over, until he released, well, what I think might be his magnum opus, 1996. He puts out this album, Fire Garden, and I got this from Columbia House, but Matt's got an interesting story about the purchase of this CD.
Yeah, so if you think back to 1996, how many of you were actually familiar with the internet and buying stuff on the internet? I mean, this was a time when web pages were very, very simple. And I remember hearing about Steve Vai said the first 1,000 people to order this album, they'll get a signed copy. So, it took many months for my copy to finally arrive. I didn't get the signed copy. I was a little disappointed, but wow, what an album. Holy cow. This has just everything every kind of style that Steve's ever done and more.
Yeah, it's got heavy stuff on there. It's got melodic stuff. It's got jazzy stuff. It's got I don't even know stuff. And of course,
it's also got him singing.
Yes, it's divided up into two parts. The first part is essentially what you'd get in a quote unquote regular Steve Vai album. And then the second one has about what, 5 or 6 songs where Steve took vocal lessons. I remember reading an interview with him in Guitar World. He went into a lot of depth about it. He's a perfectly fine singer. He emotes quite well. And people just weren't expecting it. It was just another, and I think for Steve, it was just another paint color in the palette to use. And there's some really, really melodic stuff on here, like All About Eve. And you know, when I was thinking about this, Passion and Warfare, I have the most nostalgia for. So that's probably my favorite album from Steve, but Fire Garden is probably his best. And it's definitely my second, the one I listen to the most. I mean, yeah, it's a heavy album to digest. There's a lot going on, but man, if you can get into it, I just get those melodies in my head. After that, I'm missing a few. I think you can take up the slack for a bit.
Okay. After that, in 1998, the record company put out, I don't actually own this one either, but it's a companion to one that you showed earlier. It's called Flexible Leftovers. So I've been able to find a copy of that.
Some of the songs from Flexible Leftovers, there's 4 songs that they actually put on the CD version of Flexible. And as odd and quirky as Flexible is, Flexible Leftover more so.
Yeah. And so the very next studio album from Steve came in 1999, and this is the Ultra Zone. Now, I was kind of expecting this to be like another Fire Garden type album. I don't think it really is. And in fact, I remember this one actually gives me the most nostalgia for driving around town with you and to get into it and like playing the opening track. And it's got this beautiful Hindu woman doing all these vocal. Yeah, and I was like, what in the world is that? Of course, now it took me a while to get into this one too, but I love it. Oh, there's the song on here, there's a really awesome ballad on here. Track number 9, I'll Be Around. I'll be around for a while. One of my favorite Steve Vai songs. So that was
it's one of the ones I'm missing for sure.
Yeah, 1999. And then we have another 6-year gap, and he started on this trilogy. And now I don't have the first in the trilogy. It's called Real Illusions Reflections. Came out in 2005. I haven't been able to find a copy of it, but in doing some research for his discography, and of course talking about Inviolate, it looks like his record company is reissuing a bunch of his stuff, because I see Real Illusions Reflections actually coming up as a pre-order now. Sometime, I think it's coming out in February or March. So I might be into getting that one. The second one in that series, actually, let me go back just a minute. There's a couple of compilations that came out in the early 2000s.
I've got one of those.
Okay, so the first one I've got is the 7th song, which is all of Steve's ballads. It's called The 7th Song, Enchanting Guitar Melodies, Archives Volume 1.
A very cool concept, because it's literally what it says. It's the 7th song on each of the albums. Not only that, but I should have grabbed it. I didn't think to grab it. I've got a CD that he was the executive producer of in '97 called Merry Xmas, and it's a guitar Christmas album. And the 7th track on that CD. So he's got like Brian Setzer, Joe Perry, Steve Morse, Richie Sambora, Alex Lifeson, bunch of great guitar players doing Christmas songs. And the 7th track on that album is the one Steve does. Satch is on it too, but he does the song Christmas Time Is Here from the Charlie Brown Christmas. Christmas time is here. That's the 7th track on that album. So it's on this 7th song anthology.
Yeah. So this one actually has 11 tracks. 3 of them are new ones. They're in red here. Melissa's Garden, The Wall of Light, and Boston Rain Melody. And the other ones are ones that we've heard on previous albums. The next one that I have came out a couple of years later. I actually found this one used at Digital World here. This one came out in 2002, another compilation. This one's interesting because I think this is stuff that all appeared on, well, here's music from or inspired by Crossroads, stuff from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, stuff from Encino Man. So basically his stuff that
soundtrack music.
Yeah, I don't know if this will actually have it, but
Oh,
it's got this
is it
really,
lenticular?
yeah, really neat lenticular thing where the kind of the diamond on his forehead and his head moves and stuff. So it's one of those really weirdly kind of packaged things, and it kind of opens weird, and it's like one of those original kind of, they call it when the digipacks were all like made out of plastic.
Yeah.
You got dark plastic, but yeah, that one's pretty cool. And then the very next studio album, you have to go all the way ahead to 2012. And this
before that, Matt, I want to show this one off.
Oh,
This
okay.
came out in 2003. This is when Sony was doing their Essential series, but this one's actually called The Infinite Steve Vai. I've also seen it issued as The Essential, an anthology. This came out on Sony in 2003. This one is pretty good as far as chronicling all of his career. I mean, there's a ton of stuff from Flexible and Passion and Warfare. There's only one song from Sex and Religion, but Alien Love Secrets, Fire Garden, The Ultrazone. Disc 2, which I think you could get this in a single or a double disc version. Disc 2 has a little bit of deeper stuff in here. It's got Kitten's Got Claws by Whitesnake. It's got a song called Lighter Shade of Green, which is a guitar instrumental he did on that Alcatraz album. It does have some of the movie music, like it's got The Reaper from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And it's got a little bit of stuff from Flexible Leftovers, really in-depth write-up on Steve's career. Great play, like, if you listen to this and you're not into it, don't go any further. So yeah, sorry, Matt, go ahead, back to
so the next studio album didn't come out for another 7 years. So this would be part 2 in his kind of trilogy. This one's 2012's The Story of Light. I'm not super familiar with this one yet, only because I just found it, but I have a unique history with this as well. I was at an antique store in St. John, New Brunswick one day. This is when the kids were really little, and this is almost 10 years ago. And I was excited to see a Steve Vai album just laying out on the shelf. I'm like, wow, and he's giving these away for like $2. So I took it up to the cash and just about to pay for it. And I was kind of looking through just to see, what the CD looked like. And I knew this actually came with a DVD too. It's like a hardback kind of thing, one of the first sort of hardback digibooks. Yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't have any of the discs with it. It was just the packaging. I was like, oh, well, he felt bad for me and he just gave it to me. So I had the package around for a good almost 10 years before I finally pulled the trigger and found a new one online for a decent price. I didn't want to pay a lot for it, but it does come with a DVD and a CD. So a DVD about the making of the album. It's a really, really one of the first kind of digibooks that I really like. So that was from 2012. I don't have the next collection that he put out in 2016. I think you have it though.
Yeah. I actually happened to find this at Sunrise. It is a very unique collection. Well, first of all, it's the next album called Modern Primitive. And actually this cover looks an awful lot like the cover to that 7th song. If you want to hold that up, Matt, we'll just compare. Like it's a very similar looking idea. Yeah. So the story behind Modern Primitive, and he explains it, and he goes into great detail. This is a really weird package because the CD and the booklet are all together, and the CD's kind of like, I just want to rip it and not play it because every time you open it up, you can risk scratching the CD. Basically, all the music on Modern Primitive was written between 1984 and 1990. So it's kind of a missing link album between Flexible and Passion and Warfare. He had a band called The Classified at a time with a female lead singer and a couple guys that he played with on and off through the years, Chris Fraser on drums, and I think Stu Ham on bass. So that's how far back those guys go. I'll get into it later what it sounds like, but if you take this and you flip it over, it's the
Yeah.
25th, actually 26th anniversary edition of Passion and Warfare's biggest album. So this is like, it's a weird little dual collection. Passion and Warfare has 4 extra songs on it from those sessions. One of them he didn't put on there because it sounded a lot like the opening track Liberty. So he said, well, I got to pick one, but now here they are. So it's just a cool companion piece to this. And I don't listen to it a lot. So, but yeah, it's, I was surprised to see it just in a regular store. So like, well, I should buy this.
Yeah.
So
I definitely find a copy of that.
Yeah. So does that bring us up to the present day, or is there something?
Yeah. So then we have, so The Story of Light was actually his last studio album of new material. And we were kind of expecting, so that was number 2 in a trilogy. We were expecting his next record to be the 3rd part of the trilogy. And instead, in that time, in 10 years, Steve had a few, I think he had some accidents. He hurt himself with his shoulders and had some issues with some tendons. And long story short, fast forward another 10 years to 2022, where we're at now. And we have Steve's latest solo album,
Inviolate. Yeah. And first of all, take a look at this thing that he's got. This is the Hydra. And the first track is called Teeth of the Hydra. And if you know anything about classic rock, Teeth of the Hydra is a line from T-Rex's Bang a Gong. Got the teeth of the Hydra upon you, or something like that. But the story behind this, first of all, it's very steampunk, if you look at it. And each one of these necks is what I think he has a bass.
He's got it's got a steampunk guitar. It was actually designed by Hoshino Gaki. They're a Japanese company, basically the company that owns the name of Ibanez, if you've heard of Tama drums or Tama drums. It's got 3 necks, 2 headstocks. You've got a 7-string guitar, you've got a 12-string guitar. There's a 4-string bass. It's a 3/4 squeal bass, and half of the neck on that is fretless. There's single coil pickups, there's MIDI, there's sustainer pickups. He's got a floating tremolo bridge, face splitters, basically every little toolkit and cool buzzword that people have been putting on their guitars in the last few years. He's got it all rolled into this Hydra Beast guitar.
Yeah. Wonder how heavy it is.
I don't know. And one thing I think is cool, so I don't know if you want to talk about the actual tracks on the album, but so track 1, Teeth of the Hydra, I've kind of listened for all these different parts, and you can hear like there's a 13-string harp on this guitar, and you can hear some of those plucky sounds on the song. And I think he's tried to use every little bit of the guitar on this one song.
Yeah, the description in the credits says the bass, 7-string guitar, 12-string guitar, and harp strings on this piece are all performed on the Hydra. The other instruments in the track were programmed by Steve. So that's another interesting thing. A lot of times it's not, well, there's actually quite a bit of live drums on here, but a lot of times Steve just programs everything and basically does it all. I've listened to this quite a few times in getting ready for this. And I will say, I just listened to this again yesterday, Modern Primitive. Okay. This is a hard, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it is a dense album, and it's almost overwhelming. This is just a good Steve Vai album with memorable melodies, and there's only 9 tracks on it. You're listening to it forever, and it might be the best thing he's done since Fire Garden. I don't know, but I'm quite happy with it. But as there would be with any artist that's been around and has done as many albums and as much music as Steve has, I hear things that would have belonged on previous albums, and we can get into that.
I just want
go ahead, man.
Sorry, Tim, just a few things just about the record. Of course, Steve you wouldn't think of Steve as putting out #1 albums, but he was so happy just a few weeks ago. I printed this out. Inviolate went #1 on the hard rock album charts. So he was saying in 50 years, he's never had an album or piece of his music go #1. So he was pretty excited about it.
Yeah, that's true. yeah, I mean, he's been that's true. He's been on a lot of platinum albums,
Yeah.
top 10 albums. But yeah, none of the David Lee Roth albums, the Whitesnake album, none of them were #1 albums. That's
Yeah.
that's
And
really interesting.
you were just talking about how you were enjoying listening to this album. I was looking at the lengths of all of his last bunch of studio albums, and this is definitely the shortest one by far. It's 47 minutes. It doesn't feel that long. When you compare it to Fire Garden with 74 minutes, Ultrazone with 68 and a half, 55 for Real Illusions, and 58 and a half for Story of Light. So it's a good 10 minutes to 20 minutes shorter than most of his studio
because
albums.
Steve packs so much into his songs that you almost have to like and that's not a complaint. I mean, you know, he's a genius, but it's just interesting the choices he makes. He just doesn't think like other people, and that goes down to you know, I need an instrument that does, and he creates the Hydra. There's another really interesting, skipping ahead to like the second to last track, a song called Knapsack, which is spelled APP sack, and I believe that's because his doctor's name was Knapp. His last name was Knapp, and when he injured himself, now it's a funny story. I've heard him say it. Basically, he injured himself making pizza.
Yeah,
Making pizza is a serious business, folks. But he wanted something where he could basically do everything with his left hand, and that's what he does on the track Knapsack. All programming and guitar, Steve's left hand, because his right hand was in a sling, but he could still.
Yeah, he does that. There's a video of that you can watch on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, he does. He puts out a lot of cool videos. There's another cool thing here. If you're a fan, a longtime fan like myself, on the track 6, Avalancha, he's got an old friend from the David Lee Roth days, Billy Sheehan, on bass, which is kind of cool. Okay, so go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say we're kind of bouncing around a bit, but you were talking about Knapsack, and that's track 7. It's not really a love song, which I thought was
track 8.
Sorry?
It's track 8.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Track 7 is Greenish Blues.
Oh, how did I get that wrong? 1, 2.
Which fits, because Greenish Blues is kind of a slow bluesy ballad. So yeah, and going back to that 7th song compilation, it isn't until that came on that I realized that he made sure that the 7th song on every one of his albums was a ballad, which that's just how Steve Vai thinks. Actually, you know something, I just thought of this, and I'd have to think about the David Lee Roth albums, but the 7th track on Whitesnake, Slip of the Tongue, is The Deeper the Love.
Okay.
So I don't know. So yeah, we are skipping around all over the place. Track 4 is called Candle Power. That sounds to me like something that would have been on Fire Garden, and that almost sounds like he's playing guitar, but someone is manipulating the pitch while he's playing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you and I had talked about it. So Candle Power is actually the shortest track on the album. It's just over 3 minutes. And I kept messaging him. I was like, Tim, this reminds me of something I've heard from Steve before. Not exactly. And you're like, yeah, it kind of sounds like Sisters from Passion and Warfare.
Yeah, it's got those same kind of chords.
Yeah. So Steve Vai just turned 60 in 2020. And he wanted to learn some new techniques. Imagine there's techniques that Steve Vai doesn't know. And he demonstrates this on the Candle Power song. He came up with this technique called joint shifting. So those weird effects that you're hearing that you're not really familiar with is something that he kind of taught himself. It's where he bends a note while fretting another note, but he wanted to do this with a combination of double tapping and triple stops. So it's, I mean, it's a technique for sure. Not for. And the other thing was, so the song's called Candle Power. So it makes you think of, like a bygone era type thing. The idea for him was he wanted to use a Strat style guitar, not his fancy Ibanez that he's been used to. He wanted a very clean tone, which he doesn't normally do. No whammy bars and no pick. It's all done just with fingers. So again, he was really
that's how you attain that level of excellence, though, is always pushing yourself. And that's,
Yep.
Steve has always done that. He's got a lot of people returning to this album. Like he's got a couple of tracks, Apollo in Color and Sandman Cloud Mist. He's got David Rosenthal on keyboards, who also played on Passion and Warfare. He was also a member of Rainbow. And boy, if I'm not mistaken, it seems to me he went on to Billy Joel's band. Not sure. He went on to play for somebody really big. Jeremy Colson is on a lot of these tracks on drums, as in the guy's name I could never pronounce, Vinny Colaiuta. I don't know he's a famous drummer. I've never known how to say his name. Little Pretty, I guess you could say, was the first single. It's the first song we got to hear from this album, and it's very nice melody. It's very typical Vi.
Yeah,
another thing I want to go ahead.
That's the longest song on the album. It's just under 6.5 minutes, and it's kind of like a funk, but funk as done Steve Vai style.
Yeah. Another thing about Teeth of the Hydra, and you pointed this out, anyone who's familiar with the 2013 Queensryche album, the self-titled one, the first one they did with Todd LaTorre, the beginning of Teeth of the Hydra sounds an awful lot like the, and I can't remember what the intro was called, but it's like, like that very cinematic.
Yeah, movie score effect kind of thing.
Yeah. I've listened to this quite a few times, and I mean, Steve Vai's, you have to be in the right mood to listen to Steve Vai's music. And then some of it is just a little bit out of reach, a little bit out of my comprehension. But this is what I'm going to be returning to. It's, I really like it. It's, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, all these guys, I've always said this. I don't understand how they can keep coming up with new ideas for songs, especially when they don't always have vocals. And ones that don't just sound like variations on songs they've done before, but they keep doing it. Speaking of Joe, he's got a new album coming out too. So for an interview or a review episode of that for sure. So I don't know. Do you got anything else to say about Inviolate, which by the way means free or safe from injury or violation? That's the
this is the most actual Steve Vai that I've listened to since probably Fire Garden. I've enjoyed everything that he's put out, but I find Steve goes a little bit more, we were talking about Satriani, but I think Satriani reels it in a little bit, not commercially, but I find his stuff more listenable as albums, whereas Steve doesn't seem to have as many, I don't want to say boundaries, but this one I find really listenable for what he, so there's no vocals on this one though. So it's more like Passion and Warfare style, I guess.
Yeah, Passion and Warfare, the first half of Fire Garden, and maybe that's why I'm responding to it, because those are my two favorite albums by him. And make no mistake, that would have been, because it's been such a long time since he's put out a new album, he's probably thinking, I need something that the longtime fans are going to latch right onto, and he's done it, with Inviolate. So if you're not a Steve Vai fan, this is not going to change your mind. But if you're an old school Steve Vai fan that haven't enjoyed maybe a lot of what he's done in the last 10, 15 years, I think you'll get back on board with this. And like we said, it's a relatively short album. And I'm glad I picked it up and got to fill in some holes in the collection too.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. So the actual vinyl doesn't come out until March. Trying to decide if I'm going to pick that one up. I am really liking this album a lot though.
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. So that's our 2 cents on the new Steve Vai, Inviolate, which, because it came a couple weeks after I was supposed to get it, I'm calling it Inviolate, just to be silly. But what do you think about we got any Vai fans? We must have some Steve Vai fans out there. So thanks everybody for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Remember, Unspooled, available for order. Check out on all my social media, and thanks everybody for their support, and we will see you. Cool. I'll stop recording.